What's up, and welcome back to the ranking episode of Hey, Have You Seen That Film? Where today I will be ranking the Mummy franchise. Okay, not the franchise because we're not including the Scorpion King or any of their straight-to-video sequels, and we're definitely not going to include the Tom Cruise Mummy. We're just going to focus on the Brendan Fraser Mummy films. So the Mummy, the Mummy Returns, and the Mummy 2 of the Dragon Emperor. Before I delve into this was actually a fairly easy list for me to make. I was not surprised though, because I've always had my favorite and known where the rest of them fall into place. I've always enjoyed the Mummy franchise. The Mummy films, I think they're fun and they're enjoyable for the most part, with exceptions to one film which we'll get to in a second. But I love watching one of these films in particular, but we'll get into that. We'll just jump right into it rather than me mumbling about all that. Coming in at number 3rd, and it's a pretty easy choice of why it's number 3rd, is The Mummy, the 2 of the Dragon Emperor. Let's just start off with saying that since Rachel Weisz wasn't in it and they replaced the Evie, it was a no-go. Right there was a sign that it wasn't going to be as good. And it wasn't. It was props to them for trying a new location rather than let's just go to Egypt again and rebirth Imhotep. Let's create a new mummy. Let's go somewhere else, which was a cool idea. How it was executed, though, wasn't that great. For starters, Rick O'Connell, in my mind, is one of the greatest adventure action heroes. As a kid, I loved him. He was, I loved Rick O'Connell. I think he still is one of my favorites. But the third one, in some regards, he almost became more like a Looney Tune character, is how I explained it once to somebody. The whole scene where he's, Jonathan's on fire and he's yelling and slapping his rear end to get it off on fire, and the whole scene. There's just a few scenes in there, that scene in particular, where it's just like, and the fishing scene. It's like we took, in the first movie, Rick was so cool, all these guns and this saves the girl type of hero from like the early, he reminded me like heroes from the early adventure films, like the 30s and the 40s. And then we get him in this, it's like we just digressed. He was so awesome at number 1. By number 3, he wasn't as cool as he was. He still had some cool moments in there and some redeemable qualities, but it's like you made him too much of this almost cartoon Looney Tune character. I don't know, that's how I put it. And that was a kind of for the film for me. And then, like I said, replacing Evie, because Rachel Weisz, I've read a few different things as to why she wasn't in it, but she wasn't in it. Sort of the short and sweet version is she just wasn't in the third Mummy. And it was a smart move on her part, but it would have made the movie more watchable than it is. I've probably only watched this movie like 3 or 4 times. I haven't watched it that often. Maybe a little bit more than that, but it's just, I don't even own it. I don't like it as much as the other two. So that one comes at bottom, and there's my reasonings why. Number 2 would be The Mummy Returns. It was, as a kid, I loved the sequel. It was so good, and it is. I still very much enjoy watching the sequel, but as I've gotten older, there's always just been a few things that just kind of now bug me about The Mummy Returns. Particularly, so in the first Mummy, Imhotep is cursed that whenever he comes back, he'll bring back the plagues of Egypt and rain destruction down. And then they revive him in The Mummy Returns, and none of that's there. If that's his curse whenever he's revived, shouldn't he have brought that back again in the second time around? Also, what's with his sudden Jedi powers? In the first movie, he didn't have the ability to to lift and move things with his hands, and suddenly in The Mummy Returns he's like a Jedi or a Sith Lord, and he's using the Force to move people. That bothers me. It's just kind of like, what? Where? If that had been in the first film, that would have made perfect sense, but it wasn't. He was just incredibly strong and with his powers in the first one. And now that wasn't there. With that being said, though, I do still enjoy the second one. I love seeing the further relationship of Rick and Evelyn. I love the addition of their son Alex, and it's great to have Jonathan back. It was great having the entire cast there and giving some of them more time, more screen time. Like, we get more of Emotep and Anox and Amun and a bit of their backstory. I like the whole reincarnation storyline with Anox and Amun and Evie, and that all connecting. We get more time with Ardith Pay, the Bad A Magi. He's more of a central character in this film now, and that's enjoyable. So there's a lot of things to still enjoy, and it was still a fun action adventure movie, and it was fun bringing back Emotep, and minus and again, it's not as scary as the first one. That's another thing. We went from a mixture of a bit of horror and action in the first one, and then it was just straight up action, which was still fun. I still enjoy it, I say, but another thing missing there, excuse me. But you got some cool things. You got The Rock in there as the Scorpion King, and it's wonderful CGI job. I know it's very dated, but it's still fun being like, oh, this is like The Rock's first acting gig, or his first acting gig in a movie. I'm not sure, but it was a big deal that The Rock was going to be in The Mummy Returns, and now he's gone on to be one of Hollywood's biggest and most successful stars, thanks to The Mummy Returns. And then coming at number 1 was the very easy choice, and there will not be a bad thing said about this movie, The Mummy. The Mummy is one of my all-time favorite movies, and that's not even an exaggeration. When my wife and I were dating, we watched it together, and she had to ask me to stop quoting it, because I know it basically word for word, and I will just sit with the movie and quote it. And she's not the first person to have to ask me to please stop quoting it. I remember another time watching it with my sister and my cousin, and several times my cousin had to be like, Dylan, please stop. And I'd stop for like a minute or two, and then I'd start quietly quoting the movie to myself. Hey Benny, looks to me like you're on the wrong side of the river. And then I would just get louder and louder. Hey O'Connell, nice camel. Until eventually she had to be like, Dylan, please stop. And I'd get quiet again, and it'd go through it all over again. So yes, I quote this movie a lot. And sometimes people go like, they mention patience, and then I'll go, patience is a virtue. No, right now it isn't. Anyways, I could go on how much I quote this movie and how much I love it, but I loved what they did. It was fresh. It was exciting. It was a fun summer movie. Like, this kind of movie is what people love during the summertime. It's why it made so much money. It's why it made sequels and other spin-off series. We have the whole Scorpion King spin-off series, and it's the first Mummy got it right. There was enough thrills and scariness to it, and this awesome backstory, and then this whole array of characters. It was, I can understand, like, people say it was the 90s answer to Indiana Jones. But it was awesome. I mean, as a kid, I told my Aunt Melinda that I wanted to have like 1,000 boys. I don't remember how many kids I told her I wanted to have, but half of them were going to be named Rick and half of them were going to be named Indiana. That's how much I loved these two characters. But the Mummy really, that mixture of action and horror and comedy, like, they did it right. It was a good blend that it doesn't feel like any of it really shouldn't be there. And the chemistry between Rick and Evelyn, and watching them, fall in love, and then you got Jonathan, who's just kind of there, the dim-witted brother. It really is such a fun and exciting movie, and when people say they don't like it, I don't get why. Like, in my head, it doesn't make sense, because how could you not like watching a guy literally lift the sand and put his face in it? How cool was that? So anyways, The Mummy, one of my all-time, it's in my top 5 favorite movies. If I ever make that list, it will be brought up. And so, yeah, the Mummy franchise, the sequels definitely never reached the height of the first one, and never lived up to it. And, in my family, a lot of my siblings, and I think my mom, they love The Mummy Returns. They think it's better, but never will be. Never can be. The Mummy will always be number 1. So, anyways, thank you for watching today. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Mummy franchise, so comment down below. And if you haven't seen it, you're missing out. At least with the first 2. The third one you can definitely skip. I do, usually. Every once in a while I kind of I'll watch it again. And it's like, why did I watch that? So, the third one has some good action scenes. If you like action movies, the third one still has action in it, and that's cool, but anyways, number 1 for sure. Check it out if you haven't. Number 2, still fun if you enjoy the first one and want to get more wrapped up in the world of the Mummy. Watch that. Number 3, don't worry. So, thank you for watching today, and have a great day.